So what jumps out to you first and foremost about why you think biotech is suddenly the place to be? What is the message and the urgency here for investors?
So there's going to be a few big trends in the industry. So we should remember one, pharma, despite its weakness today, or Lilly, for example, is going to see a major trend in the treatment of obesity. They miss numbers primarily because they're having capacity issues for the production of Mounjaro. So the launch has been a little bit noisy. That being said, analysts like Dave Reisinger have $26 billion in peak sales for that drug, which promises up to 20% efficacy in the treatment of obesity and diabetes. So really incredible efficacy. I think that's going to be a big tailwind for the industry. Point number two.
Go ahead. I was just going to say, to make sure that people caught what you're saying here, we are suddenly talking about obesity drugs in a way that certainly I have not ever noticed. And again, with all of the problems that are coming with this is an acknowledgement that maybe some of these can actually work. Do you think this is going to become the next big kind of category or catalyst for investment, is to say that maybe these can and will be, I'd liken it to what is cholesterol drugs, for instance, the way that just became so commonplace. Do you think that's what we're talking about here?
Absolutely. I mean, the main issue so far with the treatment of obesity has been lack of efficacy. But what we're seeing with this current generation of drugs, from starting with Novo and Lilly's drug, is incredible efficacy. We're seeing 20 to 30% weight loss, which is really unheard of. And at some point, will mirror what we can achieve with bariatric surgery. So I think the treatment of obesity is a huge tailwind for the pharmaceutical sector. And that, in turn, is a tailwind for biotech, because whenever biotech and pharma do something great for society, that's when people are reminded of what a great industry we are.
That's an interesting point. And also, do you think it can kind of be the next Ozempic? So we've all been following along, obviously, the chase to kind of get access to that drug. Are your recommendations for investors then who want to jump onto this, as we're really just starting to take off, to say Lilly and Novo are the ways to play this going forward?
Yeah, they're the two lead, and there's actually a bit of a paucity of drugs in this space, but we're going to see a lot more development, obviously, because this is going to be one of the biggest categories in the history of pharmaceuticals. I think as well, this generates a tremendous amount of cash flow for the sector, which ultimately gives rise to a lot of M&A activity. So I think the other setup that we're seeing here in biotech for 2023 is a big M&A year.
And so deal making, and I see that there's a couple of kind of drugs in particular that could be catalysts here. Would that then favor owning biotech, for instance, or is kind of the targeted class there? Is there any acquisition risk if people say, well, I own big pharma, but then all of a sudden they did all these costly acquisitions, or, maybe some of the pipelines, to the point about, the results this morning, maybe the pipelines weren't as robust as expected?
Well, for sure, right now, there's a little bit of a swap in terms of risk on. So people are moving out of large cap pharma and biotech into riskier assets, large cap pharma and large cap biotech into smaller cap biotech. So that's why we're seeing a lot of activity in the NASDAQ today, for example. M&A is going to be a big driver this year. First of all, as you know, pharmaceutical companies rely on biotech company acquisitions to basically feed the commercial pipeline. And we have an incredible crop of companies this year that are mature, that have produced strong phase 3 data, that are even approved and ready to be acquired. So from that perspective, I think M&A is going to be a big driver for the sector, and therefore a lot of attention is going to be paid to the biotech.
Quick final word then, other than the Lilly and Novo, as I mentioned, for the obesity drugs, is there any final investment recommendation you'd leave with people?
Yeah, so with regard to M&A, I think there's a lot of activity, first of all, around viruses. We're still very interested in antivirals. COVID is over for a little bit, but I think we'll see a lot of resurgence. Two, I think we're going to be a lot of activity in obesity-related illnesses. So Madrigal, which is developing a disease for obesity-related liver failure, just completed their phase 3. They're a great candidate for M&A. We've got other great companies, for example, Prevention, which treats diabetes and prevents the onset of diabetes in children. They've shown that they can prevent it for 3 years and beyond. That's an incredible asset, already approved, ready for acquisition. So Again, I think we have a crop of great biotech companies that are ready to be acquired, and that's ultimately going to drive a lot of interest in the sector.
Amazing. Listen, I almost feel better after just talking to you and hearing about it. Like, maybe we're going to go out there and cure some things and solve some problems. Dr. Christiana Bardon, thanks for your time today. We appreciate it.
Good to see you. Thanks for having me.